everyone. Once again, a very warm welcome to a platform called Beyond Boundaries, which is basically to address all of you during this kind of situation where we cannot go out. So today we have a webinar which will be addressed by Dr. Arnab Karmakar. Now to introduce Dr. Karmakar and the entire subject, I'll hand over to Mr. Devjit to introduce Dr. Karmakar, who is today's speaker. Over to you, Mr. Devjit.
Good afternoon to all. Thank you, Abhijit. Good afternoon to the participants also. And once again, I welcome rather I should say Dr. Karmakar, once again to this platform of Beyond Boundaries. So let me have the privilege to introduce the credentials of Dr. Karmakar briefly. Yes, Dr. Arnab Karmakar. Dr. Arnab Karmakar, he has completed his MBBS from RG Kar Medical College, Kolkata in the year 2009. And from 2010 to 2013, he did his MS in orthopedic surgery from IPGMER SSKM Hospital. And he is a winner of WBOA's President's Gold Medal in 2013 for submitting his best paper in Siliguri in State Conference in 2013. He did his DNB orthopedic surgery in 2015 and fellowship in arthroscopy and arthroplasty from Adelaide, Australia under Flinders University in 2015 itself. In 2016, he completed his MCH in orthopedic surgery from American Institute of Medicine, the University of Syracuse. And as far as his skills and abilities are concerned, it is something unparalleled. All types of trauma and emergency he attends, and all common disease conditions like total joint replacement of hip and knee. Arthroscopy surgery of knee and shoulder also. He has attended more than or done more than 100 knee and shoulder arthroscopy. He has conducted more than 100 cases of total hip arthroplasty, more than 500 cases of hemiarthroplasty, and more than 100 cases of total knee arthroplasty, along with more than 100 shoulder arthroscopy. And as far as his academics is concerned, it is extremely strong. 5 of his papers were published in indexed national and international journals. Presented paper on arthroscopy in ISCSA 2018 at Leeds. He is a life member of WBOA, IOA, IAS, ISKS, and AO. And he was faculty of ISCON 2018, 2019, and IACON 2019. As far as his experience is concerned, he is from a very reputed teaching institute in the country. From 2014, he is as assistant professor, and since 2019 November, he is as associate professor in that institution. He is currently attached with IPGMER and SSKM Hospital and Kothari Medical Center. Sir, before I hand over this session to you, we have got another, all the questions related with his lecture will be definitely answers. You are all requested to put your questions in chat box. Once the session is over, all of your questions will be definitely answered. And apart from that, we have a platform where you can share medical queries via email also, workmate@woochardt.com. Your questions or queries will be answered within 3 working days. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Welcome on board, sir. Over to Dr. Khan.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you again for organizing such webinars, which is actually truly beneficial to every orthopedic surgeon sitting there and watching us together, because it is the platform is where everybody can gain something, where I can gain something, where all the participants can gain something. So that is our motto, so that we can share the knowledge, and that is the only positive thing we should do in this period of lockdown. We should utilize the time properly in a positive sense, in a positive way, so that we can enhance our knowledge about anything. So again, I think thank you to WOochardt for organizing such beautiful program. So next I'll go into the topic per se, where That is why we are gathered here today. So today, actually, I am going to discuss about the PCL, that is the posterior cruciate ligament, and basic things. So, as I already told in my last webinar, also the motto of my putting this type of webinar is to teach our junior surgeons or the starters who are actually starting their arthroscopy, so that once your basic skills, basic understanding, basic decision making is become in a proper way, correct way, then the chances of error will be less in future. So basic things are very, very important. So in today's lecture, what will I'll do that how a case of PCL injury, how you are going to decide whether you are going to operate that patient or whether you are going to treat the patient by conservative mode of management. So decision making initially, then again I will go into the relative important operative steps for arthroscopic PCL reconstruction. So I'll start my screen share with the decision making, then we'll go to the next operative procedures. Okay, so my slide is visible, I hope. Yes, it is visible. Okay, fantastic. So decision making in PCL tier. So why this is important to decide? Because PCL, in contrary to a anterior cruciate ligament, where the anterior cruciate ligament does not have any potentiality to heal by itself. But in contrary to that, the PCL injuries or the injuries to the posterior cruciate ligament, due to the high vascularity of this ligament, PCL, it has got some propensity to heal by itself. And some of these injuries can be treated by proper conservative method, which can yield very good outcome in later on. So we need to understand what are the cases where we are going to treat them conservatively and what are the cases where we are going to treat them by operative mode of management. How we are going to decide on that, what are the important factors we should think upon. So when to do? Every PCL injury or a patient comes to you with a history of injury, and you on your clinical examination you have find out that there is a posterior laxity, there is a posterior draw test positive. So then order for an MRI, and MRI tells you that there is a PCL injury or PCL tear. Then how to treat that? That is important. So when go for an operative intervention, when not to go for it, that is also very important, because the motto of any surgeon is do no harm to the patient. So suppose any injury which is liable to get proper by a conservative mode of management should be treated like that. So I will describe few different situations. These are the different situations you will get your patients in your OPD. So to be make the discussion as realistic as possible, I have made it in light way rather than a didactic lecture. So just try to concentrate upon these different situations, then we'll go how we are going to decide on these patients. So suppose this is the situation number 1, that is a 22-year-old student, college student. He had got injury 2 days back while he was playing football. He came to the OPD with a swollen knee, and once there is a patient with a knee twisting injury, in your mind it clicked that patient might be having a ACL injury. So you go and you see that there is a Lachman test is negative, but contrary to your expectation, there is a positive posterior drawer rather than an anterior drawer. So once the posterior drawer test is positive, then you could make a mind in your mind one provisional diagnosis that the PCL must be injured. Next, you order for an MRI, and in your MRI, you can see, you can look that there is a edema in the posterior cruciate ligament in the femoral attachment, the white signal which is showing in the femoral attachment. So this could be of your injury to the PCL. So there might be a PCL tear. So you could make out in your mind that there might be a PCL tear. So once you are confirmed with your diagnosis, so this is the situation number 1. Next is the situation number 2. That is a 35-year male who had a history when he was somewhere going with a bike and the bike fell over his knee. And he was presented to the OPD with a painful swollen knee with a clearly visible posterior sac. Once the examination ended, the posterior drawer was positive, and he could do the X-ray. You order the X-ray. In X-ray, you would find out there is a bony avulsion. There is a bony piece which is there, and in the MRI also, you can see that the PCL has been avulsed from the posterior part of the tibia. So once this front, we could make out that this is a PCL avulsion injury, bony avulsion injury. So this is scenario number 2. Next is a scenario number 3. There is the injury, history of injury more than a year ago. So that is an old patient, more than a year ago injury. And that patient presented in your OPD with an unstable knee. And you see in the clinical examination, posterior draw, posterior, and Barrett's stress test is also positive, and dial test is also positive. So this positive dial test will give you some clue. If you can see in the MRI also, there is something which is going on to the lateral side also. PCL was not clearly visualized. So definitely it was a PCL injury along with some other ligament injury which is responsible for the positive dial test, and that is a PLC or posterolateral corner injury. So you have to be very careful on this type of situations, and you have to examine these patients very properly. You have to see the MRI plates by yourself. Don't go by the reports only. So these 3 scenarios. Now, which of these patients you are going to operate? Which of these patients you are going to conserve? Let us consider a few other things. First important thing. So what are the considering factors we are going to, or depending on these factors, we are going to take a decision whether we are going to operate or conserve. So first is the duration of injury, whether it is an acute injury, whether it is a chronic injury. So the situation 1 and 2 presented to you in an acute scenario, whereas situation 3 presented to you in a chronic scenario. Type of injury, whether it is a only PCL tear or it is a PCL tear associated with other ligamentous injury, whether it is a mid-substance tear, it's a only ligament injury, or it is a bony avulsion. What is the grading of the tear? How much it is? Whether it is a stage 1, stage 2, or stage 3, whether it is a partial tear, whether it is a complete tear, whether it is a complete tear with associated other ligament injuries also. Then again, some important patient factors are the age of the patient and the demand or the occupation of the patient, whether the patient is a high demanding, a sports person, an athlete, or only a sedentary worker. So that is also very, very important. So once you understand that any tear which is less than 14 days is called an acute PCL injury, that needs to be stressed upon. Now, how we are going to grade our PCL injuries? So there is a grading of your PCL injuries which is available. And one of the important thing is that in case of in your clinical examination, you can grade this type of injuries with stage 1 to 3 according to the laxity, or according to the how much loose is your knee, or according to the draw test. So in case of ACL injury, we can grade this thing depending upon our anterior draw test. But that is a very subjective test, and that is can variable with different type of examiners. Some examiner or some doctors are very strong. They have very good muscle power, so they can push or pull with a very strong muscle power. So that is why one thing is very, very important is that is the stress radiograph. So single leg kneeling technique is a very, very good technique to do the stress radiograph in case of a suspected PCL injuries. So what we see in this type of stress radiograph, so we see how much is that posterior translation of the tibia in comparison. So if the translation is less than 8 millimeter, then it is most likely a partial PCL injury. If it is between 8 and 12, at least more than 10, it is a complete PCL tear. And if it is more than 12, it is a associated injuries. That means a PCL and commonly along with a PLC injuries. I'll show how to do a stress radiograph in the knee. So this is a picture of a single leg kneeling technique that is clearly demonstrated by our article in Laprade. That is that when the on one leg there is a block and the block is over the tibia. So your body weight is actually coming over the tibia, and that counteraction of your body weight is actually pushing the tibia anteriorly, posteriorly. So in the image below left to your, where you can see the normal relation is that you take a point from the 15 centimeter from the tibial plateau in the posterior border of the tibia, posterior surface of the tibia, and you draw a line from that point. And another point is taken in the femur is the junction of the Blumenschatz line, most posterior part of the Blumenschatz line, and in the posterior part of the femoral cortex. That is the junctional point. So in a normal anatomical ratio, that point in the femur is actually 6.45 millimeter behind or posterior compared to the tibial line. You can see in the image C. So in the image C, shown is the normal arrangement in the normal knee, where is the PCL is intact. So this point in the femur should be posterior compared to the tibial line. Whereas in a case of suspected PCL injury, if you can see in the image D, this line has shifted posterior compared to the femoral line. So that means there is a laxity injury in the PCL. So then we have to measure what is the exact amount of translation of the tibia. Then we can grade the injury, whether it is a grade 1, 2, or 3. So you can compare in both the image. On your left, the normal. So your on your right is the normal. Sorry. So the point in the femur is posterior compared to the tibial line. Whereas compared to on the left side, you can see the tibia has translated backwards, and that line has crossed and gone posterior compared to the line in the femur. So that important understanding you need to do, and if possible, you always do the X-ray of the normal side also, because sometimes some patients have got ligament laxity. In that case, bilateral X-ray should be done. So this is one important thing. So next, keeping all this point in mind, we'll go into the algorithm of how we are going to manage these PCL injuries. We'll talk about the first acute PCL injuries, then we talk about the chronic PCL injuries. So when we have got a acute PCL injuries and the translation, posterior translation is less than 10 millimeter, or if you understand that might be a partial type of injury, then you give them a trial of conservative mode of management. So what is the conservative mode of management? You give them an extension brace with a cup pad. So that pad actually lifts the tibia forward, and 4 weeks. So 4 weeks the brace should be worn out, and the rehabilitation will be slow. So you allow any of knee movement after 4 weeks. 4 weeks brace should be worn out, and gradually you rehab those patients up to 4 months. So in case of PCL, even in a post-op case of PCL reconstruction also, the rehab is very slow compared to the rehab in anterior cruciate ligament injuries. So once you rehab all those patients, but always double check and follow up them properly whether they have any residual laxity, because high demanding patient may need a delayed PCL reconstruction later. So you counsel the patient that there is a probability that you may not need any surgery, but there is a very least possibility that in future, maybe 6 months down the line, you may require a delayed reconstruction of the ligament. But you should give a trial of conservative mode of management. Next is a where you have complete PCL tear. So the translation is between 8 to 12, more than 10 millimeter. So once it is more than 10 millimeter, if it is a bony avulsion, you have to repair it. Okay, so nowadays the preferred mode is arthroscopic pull-through suture technique, where you take bites through the substance of the PCL and we do a tunnel in the tibia, and we tie the suture over a button in the anterior cortex of the tibia, so that the PCL ligament is taut and the bony fragment actually sits over the crater. But you need to repair that. Sometimes in case of very large fragment, you may go for a screw fixation by open method. But open method has got certain disadvantages, like the chances of neurovascular injuries and the higher chances of postoperative stiffness. So suppose if it is not a bony avulsion, it's a ligament injury, and your other ligaments are also weak, like you have got muscle weakness. So that is the insufficient secondary restraint. So if already the muscles are weakness and the patient is high demanding, then you need to go for a PCL reconstruction, because you can't go for a conservative management because your supportive muscles are also weak and the demand from the patient side is very high. So you need to reconstruct that patient. But in a patient which is inactive, in a patient who is older, if the muscles are weak, then you have to try to make the muscles stronger first. So you put the patient in rehab. So first you get the muscle, then again you reassess, then again you can do the MRI and other things. Then you check and exclude any arthritic changes, then you treat accordingly. If there is no arthritis, still there is laxity, then you can go for a reconstruction. But in older patients, in low demand patients, gaining the muscle imbalance is of primordial importance rather than jumping into a PCL reconstruction, because without proper muscle balance, if you jump into doing a PCL reconstruction, the chances of failure of that procedure is very, very high. So till now, we have got answer from two parts. The situation one, if it has been a partial injury, it could be treated conservatively. Situation two, it was a bony avulsion. Bony avulsion, you have to fix it. There is no other option. Okay. So these two, I think we have made it clear. Next, I will go into the chronic scenario, or where the patient presents with some arthritic changes or multiligamentous injury. So suppose in case of an acute condition, when the patient presents with a multiligamentous injury, what we can do? So if there has been a combined PCL, MCL, PLC, all things are there. So especially these are actually maybe a dislocation type of scenario or subluxation type of scenario. The force required is very, very high. So there is chances of concomitant injury to the neurovascular junction also. So you need to check that properly. You need to rehab that patient thoroughly. You need to calm down all the acute injuries. So if all the parameters is okay, if there is no other problem in the neurovascular condition of the limb, you can go into reconstruction of the all important ligaments together if the condition of the patient allows. But if there is excessive swelling, excessive pain and other issues are there, then you should go staged. Rather than going and jumping into acute surgery of treating all these ligaments, you can go into staged manner. You can do the important structures initially. Suppose you can do the PCL and PLC initially, you can do the ACL later on. So these things may be staged depending on the which ligament is how much injured. Okay, so don't jump into treating all these things, because the chances of arthrophyrosis is very, very high in this type of scenario. So in a case of, then next is a chronic scenario where there is a old PCL injuries, when there is a other issues are also there. So in a case of old injuries or untreated injuries, neglected scenario, usually there are other problems associated, like a varus malalignment. That means there may be angular deformity in the knee. There may be only isolated PCL without other things, but those categories of patients are really, really less. So when there is an associated varus alignment, you need to do proper examination of the patient. You need to look for the proper whole length X-rays. You need to see whether there is only one compartment involved or many compartments. And the management goes along to the line of arthritis management, like high tibial osteotomy, other things. But if your patient is only very, very young, so you can stage the procedure. Like initial stage, you need to correct the alignment. After correcting the alignment, you can go for a PCL reconstruction in a young, high demanding patient if you need to preserve the joint. But alignment has to be correct before you are going for any ligament reconstruction. If you are going to do a ligament reconstruction in a malaligned knee, it is going to enhance the arthritic changes and it will cause failure of your reconstruction. These concepts has to be very, very clear. Okay. Next, if there is a only isolated PCL injuries, there is no angular deformities, though these patients are very, very less, and you need to check for any exclusion of arthritis in the joint. If there is subtle amount of arthritis also, you don't consider doing a PCL reconstruction. Rather than treat the patient in line of arthritis like any cartilage therapy or viscosupplementation, other things, and ask the patient that patient might require a knee replacement later on. But if the patient improves after initial phase of rehabilitation, and if the patient is young, demanding, active patient, then you may consider doing a PCL reconstruction along with other modes of management of arthritis like viscosupplementation later on after your ligament reconstruction. But you need to counsel all these patients that in a case of chronic injury, the chances of developing arthritis is high, and eventually that all those patients may need a total knee replacement later on. But in a case of a chronic scenario where there is a multiple ligamentous injuries and the joint is really very lax, there is high probability that the joint is arthritic. So we should try to rehabilitate those patients. We should try to avoid any type of ligament reconstruction in those patients, because presence of arthritis is actually a contraindication for ligament reconstruction. But if the patient has got very slight amount of arthritis and the patient is active, demanding, and then you can consider reconstruction of the ligaments. But if the arthritis score is high, there is no point of doing a ligament reconstruction, you should straight away go forward for your total knee replacement or unicondylar or whatever management of your arthritis. So to be very clear, you need to understand what is the arthritis scaling of the patient, whether there is any angular deformity, whether there is associated ligament deformity. So depending all these factors, your management plan should be done. So next we come back again to the scenarios. Situation was, you can remember. So looking at the image and clinical examination and doing a stress X-ray, if you find that is a partial injury, then definitely we are going to treat this patient conservative by conservative mode of management. Because this PCL ligament is highly vascular ligament, they have high chance of healing by their own. Situation 2, bony avulsion, no confusion. You need to treat them by arthroscopic fixation. No other option. Situation 3, there is a young patient and multiligamentous injury. There is no such arthritis. Then you have to go for arthroscopic reconstruction of all the ligaments. So in a chronic scenario, presence of arthritis and presence of any other angular deformities will actually let you think before going any ligament reconstruction. Otherwise, if these things are negative, you can go ahead with the ligament reconstruction. So to summarize on this part, give you a very clear-cut message is that, so partial tear with low demand, you definitely conserve this. Partial tear with high demand with symptomatic. Some few patients are really symptomatic who are high demand, who are actually want to go back to their sports, who want to go back to their job very fast. You need to repair or augment some time. Displaced bony avulsion, repair it, no confusion. Complete tear without any complaints. Observe these patients. Tell them they might need a reconstruction later on whenever. Complete tear symptoms, reconstruct it. Complete tear with symptoms or combined injury, reconstruct all the ligaments which are torn, like PCL, PLC, other structures. Okay, so I hope the message is clear to you how you are going to decide on the PCL reconstruction injuries. So if we have any questions, we can take it now, or then otherwise we will go to our next presentation. Do you have any questions now?
Right now, we don't have any question. So,
okay, so I'll go into my next presentation, and then. So my next presentation is that how we are going to reconstruct this PCL by arthroscopic mode of measurement. So the surgical tips and tricks, basic surgical tips and tricks, and what are the things you should keep in your mind before going for arthroscopic reconstruction, and how we are going to do it. So I'll show you the basic steps of this video and few important points. Okay. So
just to the audience,
yeah.
Doctor, those who have any queries, you can put it in the chat box and we'll take it to Dr. Arnab Kormakar. So there is a chat box in the bottom of your screen. Please type your question in the chat box and we definitely take the question to Dr. Kormakar. Thank you.
Okay. So arthroscopic PCL reconstruction. So as we have decided that this patient will need an arthroscopic PCL reconstruction, this patients we are going for a conservative mode of management, then we need to know further important tips and tricks of how we are going to treat this patient by arthroscopic reconstruction. Okay, so again, let us discuss once again what are the indications, clear-cut, pure indications of surgery in a PCL injury. Grade 3 symptomatic PCL tears. I have already clarified what is grade 3. Combined instabilities. That means your PCL is torn, your ACL is torn, or your PCL is torn, your PLC is torn. So in case of combined stability, the chances of healing of any partial injury also becomes very, very less unless you make them stable. So combined instability is the indications of treating the ligament surgically. Posterior drawer more than 10 to 12 on teloscales. So stress radiography you have already shown you. So 10 to 12 should be there in your stress radiography. Displaced PCL bony avulsion. One case scenario already shown to you. So these are the important points where you need to check, where you need to treat these patients in by arthroscopic PCL reconstruction. So that is an important thing. So keep in mind all these indications. So before going for arthroscopic reconstructions, what are the factors you should keep in your mind? As we already told you, the timing of the injury. Whether you are going to treat a patient who has suffered an injury yesterday, whether you will do or operate in the next day in that patient. In case of ACL, we also advise the patient to wait for 3 weeks at least before we are going to put our scope in. There are major disadvantages doing operations in acute scenario. So those are actually the chances of infection is very high, tissue edema is very high, and chances of arthropfibrosis later on, bleeding is very, very high. So we advocate at least we should wait at least 3 weeks before we are going to treat these ligament injuries by arthroscopy. Next important is that if there is a partial injury or the remnant is there, it's only a avulsion from the femoral end or tibial end, but the remnant is there. That means the substance is okay. So how we are going to tackle that? Whether we're going to keep that or whether we're going to remove that. Next is the choice of our graft. What should be the ideal length? What should be the ideal breadth? What should be the ideal thickness of our PCL? And according to that, what is the ideal graft for our PCL reconstruction? That we also need to consider. Whether we are going for a single bundle reconstruction or a double bundle reconstruction. Then there is a, two techniques of PCL reconstruction. One is a tibial tunnel. Another is an inlay technique. I'll describe what are these two techniques and what is the advantage and disadvantage of both of them. Finally, how we are going to fix it, because PCL is a very, very strong ligament and it takes a load of our body and knee. So you need a very strong and robust fixation. So timing. So elective procedures should be done at least 3 to 6 weeks of initial injury. As I told you, minimum of gap of 3 weeks should be there. You should not jump in doing in the acute scenario. And why? Why? That is very important. Because the posterior capsule tends to heal. So as in these cases of PCL injury, there is also an injury to the posterior capsule. So this posterior capsule actually heals by at least 3 to 4 weeks. Because this healing of posterior capsule is very, very important, because that will prevent the fluid extravasation in the posterior muscle compartment or gastroc compartment. Because in acute scenario, if you're going to put much amount of fluid, because it's a time-taking surgery, so much amount of fluid, and you need to work in the posterior part of the compartment. So if your fluid goes into the gastroc, that might lead to compartment syndrome, and the result will be devastating. So please avoid doing any surgery in acute scenario. Please wait at least for 3 weeks. Again, remnant preserving. So definitely yes. In our motto is that as we are going to recreate the anatomy, so if the remnant is okay and it looks healthy to you, it looks vascular to you, you can preserve it. Because what happens, because PCL is a very vascular structure, it usually tend to heal with your reconstructed graft. And once it heals with your reconstructed graft, it will actually add stability and strength to your reconstructed graft. So what we try to advocate is that you should try to preserve the remnant as much it is there, but do not compromise with your footprint or the tunnel positioning. If your graft is actually hindering into tunnel positioning, then you should try to remove it. Otherwise, try as much as you can to preserve the remnant. Next is the graft selection. So you need to understand the anatomy of the PCL properly. So if you think about the anatomy, the intra-articular length for PCL is required is 4 centimeters. It's a longer graft, almost double compared to the ACL, whereas the intra-articular of anatomy of ACL is around 2 to 2.5 centimeters. And the average length of the PCL graft should be 8 to 12. Why 8 to 12 centimeter? Because if you are going to using the tibial tunnel technique, where we are actually pushing the graft through the tibial tunnel from anterior, then taking it down and then taking it to the joint and taking it out from the femur, in that case we need a longer graft. Why? So 4 centimeter is required for intra-articular portion. Minimum 2.5 centimeter is required both in tibia and femoral tunnel. So if you make up this becomes 9 centimeter. And when the tibia is pulled, because when you are going to fix the screw in the tibia, you need to pull an anterior drawer. So this anterior drawer requires 1 centimeter more graft. So how it becomes? So the calculation now becomes at least 10 centimeter. So you should at least have 10 centimeter of the graft. Then what is regarding the diameter? The diameter of graft selected should be a minimum of 8 millimeter for our Indian patients, but for Western literature it is quoted as 9 millimeter. But in Indian patient, average Indian patient, 8 millimeter is okay, as it has to counteract the gravitational aberration, because gravitational force, because it is a vertical graft, and abrasive force because it is at the killer turn. You have to take the graft through the tibia and take it back within the joint and take it into the femur. So in the tibia, it has got almost 90-degree bend, and that is what is called a killer turn. And when you pull the graft before fixing the tibial screw, actually there is a elongation force. So very thin graft will give away and will become loose or elongated. So at least 8 millimeter of thickness should be there. So now the two techniques they use. So the on your left side is the commonest technique we use. That is the standard technique we use. So that is the technique is actually the tibial tunnel technique. So that is the, we put the graft from somewhere anterior in the tibia. We take the graft in, we take it out here, and we take it out to the femur and fix it in both and tibia and femur with screws. So this is the area, this arrow is the killer turn in the tibia, because see how much is the graft is bending here, and there is a huge abrasive force in this graft. Okay, but there is also a technique called the inlet technique, where actually it actually recreates the normal anatomy. Here there is, by open method, you fix the graft in the posterior part of the tibia, exactly at where the PCL is attaching with the tibia. Okay, so it actually recreates, the inlet technique recreates the proper anatomy, but again it has got certain disadvantage because it requires an open procedure, because there is chances of neurovascular injury, and as you have to do an open procedure, there is a chances of stiffness. So now all these disadvantages we have overcome in all arthroscopic technique, and we can do a yield better function in the tibial tunnel. So nowadays tibial tunnel is the standard and best method we follow. Regarding the single bundle and double bundle concept, so there is currently the data of two techniques is not enough to prove the superiority of another. So single bundle scores over that it is easy, less morbid, cost effective, and easier revision, whereas double bundle, that is the anterolateral bundle and posteromedial bundle, making two tunnels on the femoral footprint, seem to be more anatomical, because the insertion of the PCL in case of femur is very broad, but it comes with the tag of it's very technically demanding. It has got increased morbidity and difficult revision. If it fails, the revision will be very difficult and increased cost of the procedure. You need double implants. So as there is statistically no significance between both of this, so nowadays we are practicing the single bundle reconstruction for the PCL. Okay. Next is the fixation options. So fixation options is that in case of femoral graft, usually inside out, outside in femoral tunnel we do. Interference screw, maybe bioabsorbable, maybe metal, is the best fixation device available. Whether you can use the endobutten button on the cortex, sometimes we need double fixation in case of a revision type of scenario, whether along with the screw you can put some staples or screw washer in the cortex. And for the tibia also, screw is the best option, interference screw, whereas you can still use a pillar post type of things in addition to the screw in the patient. So next comes is the portal. So compared to the normal knee portals, as we discussed in our last webinar for the ACL, compared to our ACL portals, these portals in the for PCL surgery should be very high. Okay. So as PCL is a next step of ACL, you can understand that this portal should be a bit high. So if you can see on the right side, the left side of your image, see there are both high anterolateral and high anteromedial, because we need to look in the posterior part of the tibia. We need to go into the posterior part of the tibial plate tooth. So if we come parallel to this, we will not be able to see much. But if we come higher, we'll be able to see in the posterior part of the tibial plate tooth, where actually our big pin will come for the tibial tunnel. I'll show you in video. So high anterolateral anteromedial portal. So just at the grazing the patellar tendon and just higher, just touching the patella. So your portals has to be higher. Next, two other important accessory portals you may need. One is absolutely needed is the posterior medial portal. It is done under vision. So one, your scope is in the posterior medial compartment of the knee. Under vision, you palpate and put a needle, and through that you take your trocar cannula. For PCL surgeons, you need two shoulder cannulas. Okay, so keep handy these two shoulder cannulas. So if you are able to do and see properly with this posterior medial portal, you may go away with this. But sometimes we need to go a transeptal portal through the posterolateral. So from this posterior medial portal, we can create another posterolateral portal. So both way we can access the posterior part of the knee. We can clear, we can see from one end, we can work from another end. So everything should be done under your vision. So that is important. So we are going to do with all these four portals. So once you go inside, in a case of only isolated PCL injury, whatever you will see is a lax ACL. So once you go inside, you need to do a diagnostic scopy of the whole of the joint. You need to check for any other associated meniscal injury. Then this lax ACL looks very healthy, ACL looks very intact, but it is not tight. It just looks very lax. So lax ACL will give you a clue that your PCL is actually injured. So in a case of diagnostic scopy also, where your diagnosis is not confirmed, if you go in and see this type of image, you should be quite confirmed that your PCL injury is there, ACL is still there. So you can do your probing into the ACL and you can pull the ACL with your probe to look for whether it is intact or not. So next I'll show you a video of showing a diagnostic scopy and how once your diagnostic scopy is confirmed, next is that you go into the posteromedial compartment of the knee and try for creating the posteromedial portal. Can you show the video now?
Please start. Yeah.
So if you are going into the knee for a diagnostic scopy, you can see on the right side of the shaver, it is the, you can go ahead. So this is the ACL, which looks very lax. And so, and if you can understand that almost the whole of the medial meniscus and the posterior horn of the medial meniscus is also visible. So this is the posterior horn of the medial meniscus, which is visible. See the posterior horn, whole of the medial meniscus is visible. There is clear-cut gap on the posteromedial part of the knee. So once you do, you should check and with the probe regarding the ACL, you should also check in the root of the medial meniscus, because sometimes there is a root avulsion or root tear of the medial meniscus. And if you can understand, see how I am pulling the PCL, it is coming out and there is a collection of blood in the insertion point of the PCL in the femoral condyle. So this injury looks to me suggesting of an PCL injury, whether ACL seems to be intact due to, but it was lax. So I am just created a space in the posteromedial part in between the PCL and the medial femoral condyle, and through that space I am going into the posterior part of the joint. So I have entered the posteromedial compartment of the joint. If you can understand, from my left side it is the posterior horn of the medial meniscus, and I am looking in the posteromedial capsular part. So that is the area where I should actually going for my posteromedial portal, and it should be done under vision. Again, if you can see this image, you see the ACL looks good, healthy, but it is lax. So this is a definite telltale sign of a PCL injury. So lax ACL. So once you are through this type of there, that you have got actually seen that the ACL is lax, then next you are going to look for any other into the creating the portals. So once you are going to create the portals, you should be treating the, okay. So once you are going to treat the portals, next I will show you how we are going to treat the portals. So next is the creation of a posteromedial portal. Once you are in the posteromedial compartment of the joint, you put a needle from that space. Once you are in the safe zone, then you nick the skin and you actually enter your cannula. So once you enter your cannula, your working portal is ready. You can have a look. So this is where we are actually looking through the posteromedial portal. So now we have put our scope into the posteromedial portal. So to our right, this white structure is the PCL ligament, and to our right it is the tibia and the femur. So white structure in right down is the tibia. So see how we are going to come. So this white bundle is actually our PCL remnant. The bone above is femur, the bone below is the tibia. So now we are trying to create a space in between the femoral condyle and the remnant of the PCL, because we are trying to preserve the PCL remnant. So now we are trying to create a space, and we are putting the jig for drilling the tibial tunnel to see how much we need to clear down up to the tibia. Okay. So next you will see how the jig is coming through in between the femoral condyle and the remnant of the PCL. We are trying not to damage the remnant of the PCL and try to keep it as much as we can. So we are through looking from the posteromedial part, posteromedial portal, and see how much down. So the principles of doing a remnant preserving PCL reconstruction is that whenever there is a remnant is there, you need to go down. So your tibial tunnel should be down compared to already the anatomical tunnel. And in case of femur, it should be superior compared to the already existing tunnel. So in this case, so by putting this jig, we are actually seeing that how much we are going to clear. So after ascertaining that how much we are going to clear, now we are actually remove that jig and we are doing the posterolateral portal under direct vision, or we are creating the transeptal portal. So in this video, we will see now how we are doing a transeptal portal. So we are came through a posterolateral part of the joint. So I am looking from the posteromedial portal. We have come from the posterolateral part of the joint. Once we have created a portal from the posterolateral part of the joint, now we have come with our shaver to create the clear the posterior part of the knee. So this is now we are clearing the posterior part of the knee. Here you can see. So this is the actual the PCL remnant. If you can see, the tibial attachment was okay. It was good. So we tried to clear all the things, tissue sides and in down, to clear a good space in that area. So we are clearing it with shaver. We can use the RF also. So after clearance, if you can see, now we are ready almost. We have cleared almost deep down. So we are now able to go down compared to our original PCL remnant. So once we are go down and everything is under our vision, we are ready to go for drilling. Okay. So that should be very, very important. So once we have done the under vision, now next we will drill the tibial tunnel. So once we drill the tibial tunnel, so our jig is under vision. So now we are going to drill the tibial tunnel, and everything should be done under vision. This is, I would say repeatedly, that everything should be done under vision. So as you see, once your jig is there, some company has got very good jig. So once your pin comes out, that actually prevent the pin to go accidentally into the posterior part. So once you feel that your pin has come, don't push it, leave it there, put a retractor, put a protector there. So they have, some company has got a very good protector. See how this protector is very nice. So you can protect the pin, you can hammer the pin so that it comes out, then you start drilling. Again, you have to do it under your vision. And when you are doing it under your vision also, you have to be very, very careful, because suppose your assistant is drilling, he may just push it forcefully and that drill may slide, which happened in this case slightly. I'll show you how the drill has slide. See how the drill has slide in spite of putting a guide. So you have to be very careful, and the principle should be stop, drill, stop, drill, stop, drill, like that. Don't drill continuously. Okay. Once you have drilled to that, you put a suture loop through that tibial tunnel, and you take that suture loop out from the anteromedial portal. Before that, two important thing is that you need to rasp. You need to rasp the edges of the tibial tunnel, and you need to shaver it out, because you need to make the tibial tunnel, smoothen it out, so that the chances of abrasion injury to the graft is minimized. So once you are going there, once you have put your loop through your bit pin, you can take that loop out through the anteromedial portal. So you take the loop out through your anteromedial portal, keep it there, and you take our bit pin out. So your tibial tunnel is ready now. Once your tibial tunnel is ready, you should go for your femoral tunnel now. So before going into your femoral tunnel, I'll show two important points regarding this tibial tunnel and femoral tunnel. So I'll show my PPT again, that where you should do important things is that, so there are markings in the jig in the tibia. So you should be at least 20 millimeters. See, there are markings 5, 10, 15, 20. So that 20 should be at parallel with your tibial plateau. That thing you have to be very important. So you should be at least 20 millimeter below from the tibial plateau in the posterior ligament footprint. Guide wire in place protected by tip. So you have a proper guide wire protector. Sometimes if you are not confirmed enough that you have gone posterior to that part, you can go and check with the X-ray or CM and rasp the edges of the tibial tunnel, or do it with your shaver so that it can smoothen out, because that can actually minimize the chances of abrasion injury to the ligament. So tibial tunnel we did, we have seen. Next we will go for drilling of the femoral tunnel. So femoral tunnel is that you need to check and look for the femoral footprint. If there is any graft is present, you can go in between the footprint. Otherwise, it is on the 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock position, and it should try to drill in at the junction of the cartilage and bone. See, the tunnel has been at the junction. So it is usually outside in drilling, and guide wire placed outside in and protect the guide wire and femoral tunnel for anterolateral bundle, single bundle posterior ligament reconstruction. Shallow and high position of the femoral tunnel you have to look for. If the already the notch is shallow, you need to broaden it out. So few points before you go in to check the position repeatedly, that is important in case of tunneling the femoral tunnel. Okay, so next I'll again show you the videos how we are actually going to drill the femoral tunnel. So once we are going to drill the femoral tunnel, so before we are drilling the femoral tunnel, we need to clear the femoral footprint. If you have got the footprint in the femur, so that will give you the best idea that where you are going to put your femoral tunnel. That is very, very important. Okay. So here it is the femoral tunnel we are going to drill. So once you put your jig, you need to look carefully and you need to drill your bed pin out. So once your bed pin comes from there, you need to hold the bed pin and you need to drill with desired thickness of your graft. So you need to check, you should be at the cartilage and bone junction and in the correct position. Next you drill with your drill, and once you have drilled, you will see how nicely the hole is actually at just the cartilage junction. So if you can see, so the hole is exactly on the cartilage junction. Once you are there, now you with your suture retriever, you go in and take the loop which we have actually retrieved from the anteromedial portal, which we have came actually from the tibial tunnel, and we take the loop out from the femoral cortex. So here you completes the tunneling, drilling of the tunnel. So now we are ready. So we take the loop out from the femoral tunnel. So that actually shows the actual orientation of your graft placement there. So next, once we are ready with this, next we are going for our graft passage. So next, if you are ready for a graft passage, the graft which was already prepared, we are actually tunneling that graft through the tibial tunnel. So graft will go through the tibial tunnel, it will come out through the joint and it will take out from the femoral tunnel. But one is important thing is that when you are going to use screws, before pulling the graft into the femoral tunnel, you should put the bed pin for the screw. Otherwise, once you put your graft within the tunnel, after that putting the bed pin within the joint becomes very, very cumbersome. And if you are bed pin in between the substance of the graft, there is high chance that it could lacerate the graft when you are putting the screw. So bed pin should be in the bone and graft junction. So the technique is that before pulling the graft into the femoral tunnel, you should put your bed pin. So you can see, you mark your graft that how much you want in your femoral tunnel and how much you want in your tibial tunnel. So this was a quadruple Semitic graft and it was 8.5 millimeter of thickness. See, some amount of abrasion has still occurred when we are trying to pull the graft to the tibial killer turn. So a broad and robust, strong graft is actually required for PCL reconstruction. So this graft was 8.5. So I think it was sufficient enough. So once you have put the graft in the femoral tunnel. Now you are ready with the screw fixation. Once you are will fix usually the femoral screw first. So in this position, we fix the femoral screw first from outside in technique. So once you can see that how much, yes, this is the screw is actually coming, and it is the in between the graft and the bone. So once you have screw is already there, you pull the graft, and even when you pull the graft before fixing the tibial screw also, you can see how the ACL looks tight, or it has become already taut. See how the ACL become already taut once you pull the graft from the tibial tunnel. So once you have done this, you fix the tibial tunnel screw in, again it is 70-degree position, and giving an entry draw, you fix the screw into the tibia. So after all these things, we actually see next is the final picture, how it looks once you have fixed all the screws both in femoral and tibial tunnel. So this is the final. So we are looking from the posterior medial portal after fixing all these things. To your right is the graft. You can see how shiny is the graft, and if you can see how posterior, how below it has gone, it is just sliding, and we are trying to pull and push the tibia, so it's not going in. So it's rock solid, it's tight, and if you can understand the, I'll show you. Just give me a second. If you can understand that this is the original PCL remnant. So this is the original PCL remnant, and this is the graft. Okay, so graft has become way down, slightly medial, and we have preserved the original PCL remnant which was already there. So gradually it will heal up, it will make up into a very broad and strong ligament. Okay, so that has to be very important thing. So once it is clear, so next we'll see how it is the final picture. See, we are pushing and pulling. So now the alignment in the tibia and femur has become exactly corrected, and the stability of the joint looks very, very beautiful. Okay, so I think we'll go again to the PowerPoint, and almost we have finished. So we'll show you one slide and we'll finish it up. So this is the thing, if you see in the picture on your left, is type of final. Once you tighten and fix the graft, your ACL will become automatically tight. Okay. So that is very important. So regarding the few points in the rehab, one thing I will try to tell you about the rehab in case of PCL is that the rehab for PCL is actually very, very slow. You need to go very slow. Okay, it's compared contrary to ACL, you need to very slow. So initial 3 weeks, you should brace the knee in extension. You should not allow them any weight bearing, or if you at all allow, then toe touch partial weight bearing should be allowed. After 3 weeks, start the knee mobilization, start the weight bearing protocol, and by 24 weeks, so by 6 months, you actually try to achieve the full knee motion or full flexion. Okay, and the return to sports is actually very, very less compared to the normal ACL or rehab after any types of other ligament injuries. Another important points I'll show you. This is the brace we use for PCL patients, whether you are going to treat them conservatively, whether going to use it in postoperative space. So there is a foam which is attached in the tibial support in the lower part of the tibia, and always try to use a foam in this triangulated manner, because any other hard thing will irritate the patient, will press the calf muscle and actually may cause some tingling numbness in the limb. So patient is not going to use that. So try to use the foam. It will serve the purpose and it will be comfortable for the patient also. I think we have finished all. So we can take the questions on if there is any.
That I just hand over to Devjitda. There is questions has come. Yeah, Devjitda.
Yes.
Hand over to you.
Yes, Dr. Karmakar, thank you very much for your very valuable presentation. We have got one question, sir.
Yes.
The question was asked by Dr. Kumar Anupam from Gaya. Can you show landmarks of posterior lateral portal?
Exactly. Okay. then I'll again slide. So I'll share my screen and I'll explain. Okay.
Mhm.
So the thing is that there are many ways we can do the posterolateral portal. Important and easiest way is that we should do the first posteromedial portal, and from this posteromedial portal through this cannula you can put your shoulder Wissinger rod. So you can put a Wissinger rod in exactly grazing the posterior part of the tibia. Once your rod is there, it actually coming out from the posterolateral corner of your knee. And you have to understand that, see in this image. So once you are in the posteromedial portal, so you have created the posteromedial portal under direct vision. And once you have created the posteromedial portal, we have put a Wissinger rod through that posteromedial portal, just grazing the posterior surface of the tibia and trying to come out on the posterolateral corner. Okay. So if you put a Wissinger rod from that area, from this portal, a rod if you place, and it will usually come out somewhere here. And you are looking from the anterolateral portal through the scope this area. Okay. So you are in the posterior compartment of the knee and you are looking in the posterolateral portal where you are actually exiting. And your Wissinger rod should be just slightly above the tibial plate. It should not go below. Because if you go below, there is a chances of injuring the peroneal nerve. And whenever before putting the skin incision, you always palpate the head of the fibula and you should be one thumb above the head of the fibula. Okay, at least you should be one thumb above the head of the fibula. So you palpate the head of the fibula. You are pushing your Wissinger rod from this medial side. So suppose this rod is coming like this. So from medial side to lateral side. So your rod is now coming like this. You palpate the head of the fibula, it will be somewhat here. Once you palpate, you should be at least one thumb gap in between that. Once you palpate and you look from your anterolateral portal, scope is into the posterior compartment of your knee. You look here, you do it under vision. Your Wissinger rod is visible to you through your scope. Then you give a skin incision over the Wissinger rod. Try to manipulate the rod throughout, take out through the skin. Then you give a broader incision and then you use the dilator and you introduce your cannula. So this is the safest way, but experienced people can do by their blind technique, just putting the scope into the posterior compartment of the knee as we did the posteromedial portal. You can do that. But to me, I think for beginners, this is the best and safest possible. These are the few things you should keep in mind, that first you create the posteromedial portal, then you try to clear a space in the posterior part, somewhat putting your saver. Then you put your Wissinger rod to the posteromedial portal, try to impinge on the area where the posterolateral. Few things you need to keep in mind, that you should be at the level of the tibial plateau, slightly above. If you can understand the tibial, if you can understand, the portal is actually slightly above the level of the tibial plateau. So if it is the level of the tibial plateau, portal is slightly above posteromedial and posterolateral both. So you come from the posteromedial, impinge the skin, take a skin incision, then do gradually. So it is the best, and still now I use this technique, but sometimes in hurry, but wherever I am confident, I can straight away come out from this posterolateral with a needle or something and directly come out, as I showed in this video. But for beginners, I will ask you to do by this indirect method.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. Dr. Anupam is quite satisfied with the answer. He says, that's great. Quite a nice presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for your enlightening lecture, which will be of immense help, especially for the future doctor fraternity. Sir, looking forward this sort of CMEs having educational values in future from your end, sir. We will just get in touch with you in due course of time. And now over to Shishito Mukherjee for giving the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Devjit. First of all, thank you, Dr. Arnab Karmakar, to come once again and give a fantastic and very basic presentation. I think this will help to all the doctors on this topic. And really, we want you many times. Uh, in fact, I request you to, for the next webinar also, you plan something, because after your webinar, we are getting lot of requests. So I request you to once again, you please come with your presentation. So thank you very much, Dr. Karmakar, and I thanks to all the doctors, those who have participated, who have come and participate this program. It's a workshop type of program, and it's a really, I think it's a, the sharing knowledge is most important thing, and we work hard make this digital platform for sharing knowledge. And when we are in the lockdown period, we can't do anything. In fact, we are absolutely in the stop position there. Sharing knowledge should not be stopped. So we are continuously arranging these types of program every time. And we thank you for your participation, and thank you once again, Dr. Karmakar, because without you, these types of program will not happen.
Not have been possible. Thank you, sir. Thank you once again.
And just I like to share with you that for doctors, if you want to use this platform for your patient, you can contact our field managers. So we can give the digital platform. You can say to your patient. Even we are started the to help you in the online clinic. So we are making the e-profile for you, and where you can directly contact our managers. They will make the profile for you. And the lots of program is there in evening. It's, in fact, there is a program on total knee replacement in varus knee, which will be presented by Dr. Kumar Anupam from Gaya. So the program will start from 7 p.m. and you can join this program. We can send you the link, and I already the link has shared with everybody, I think. So you can, those who have not already got the link, you can contact our field managers. They will provide you. So with that, thank you very much, Dr. Karmakar, and we want to again, and from entire OKHA team, the platform of Beyond Boundaries, I thanks to all the doctors. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, sir.